Hello, fellow humans. Katrina here. Quick disclaimer. I am a licensed professional counselor. I am not necessarily your counselor. Anything that we'll be talking about today should not be considered as medical, legal, or otherwise advice. Everything is for purely entertainment and educational purposes only. Disclaimer over. Today, I want to talk about what I don't know about the secular 12 steps. There are many, many different 12-step programs. I'll tell you a bit about the origins of Alcoholics Anonymous, some secular versions of various 12-step programs, and then what I think about the future of 12-step programs. So these two guys named Bill and Bob came up with the 12 steps when they got sober back in the 1930s. Oh, that's almost 100 years ago. And they did that based on the 28 Oxford group principles. After they both got sober, they were attending those Oxford groups, and apparently they didn't like it when there was the drunks only, that was a quote, allowed at a house meeting. And that eventually led to 6 steps, which then became 12 steps, and the 28 principles, if I recall correctly, became the tenets in the Big Blue Book. And I've heard rumors that the talking circle concept has native origins. I want to read to you just step 1 from 5 different 12-step versions. And that's not to say that they're all different programs. It's just that when working any 12-step program, it's important to find what works for each and every individual. And so the step 1 principles are primarily insight and honesty. Honesty is a big one. So from the adult children of alcoholics, the step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over the effects of alcoholism or other family dysfunction, that our lives had become unmanageable. And from Tony A's 12 steps, we admitted we were powerless over the effects of living with alcoholism and that our lives had become unmanageable. Now, the proactive 12 steps, again, these are secular versions, so there's no G word. The proactive 12 steps says, I get it. What I've been doing is self-destructive. I need to change. And from the alternative 12 steps, I really like that Secular Guide to Recovery by Cleveland and Arliss. I'm not sure if that's how to pronounce that author's name, but Arlys. And the alternative 12 steps says, admit we are powerless over other people, random events, and our own persistent negative behaviors, and that when we forget this, our lives become unmanageable. And lastly, but not least, Jeffrey Moon, a licensed marital family therapist, I think it's licensed marriage and family therapist. He wrote a book called Staying Sober Without God, and he proposes the practical 12 steps. Step 1 is admitted we were caught in a self-destructive cycle and currently lacked the tools to stop it. So if any of those resonated with you in terms of having issues with alcohol, drugs, or even a family member that has those, programs like Al-Anon aren't for the person that has the biggest problem necessarily, but for the family members who are affected by the drugs or alcohol or other dysfunction in a particular family. So I really don't know what the future holds for 12-step programs, but I do see society moving away from the shame-based treatments and moving more towards, I would say, scientific thinking rather than a moralistic thinking. If you look even at the serenity prayer, that God grant me the serenity, it starts with the G word. And so it's very right, wrong, good, bad, rather than acknowledging that it's a disease oftentimes that's not a choice for somebody to use. But once they find treatment, that treatment is a choice, and you can have the relief without relinquishing any of your practical beliefs and maintaining that scientific thinking rather than moralistic. It can still be seen and understood and really felt that it is not helpful to poison the meat suit that is what we live in. We do want to extend our life, most people do at least, for as long as we possibly can and live healthy, long lives. But unfortunately, if we approach something that's unhealthy again and again, even if we know that it's not that great for us, then it can have the appearance of being a safe thing to do or a good thing to do. And it can even be relaxing. People who smoke cigarettes will often tell you that it relaxes them. Now, do you need a whole 12-step program to quit smoking nicotine? I don't know. I haven't really ever heard of anyone talk about that. And yet people do it all the time for alcohol or narcotics or even emotional sobriety, like the adult children of alcoholics. And so, whatever it is that you may have an addiction to, alcohol, drugs, excitement, video games, gambling, pornography, if you're looking for recovery, if you have the desire to recover from the effects of whatever that thing is, check out some 12-step programs. And if you're into the whole God thing, well, that's the majority of them, and you'll find many meetings easily. If you're looking for the more secular versions, you might look up the name of the program and add agnostic or agnostica. For example, there is AA agnostica as well as NA agnostica. And I want to say that there is an ACA agnostica, but don't quote me on that. All right, so I told you today about a little bit, I would say, about the origins of the Alcoholics Anonymous program. And everybody mentions Bill as a co-founder. Nobody ever mentions Bob very much. I think I'll have to look into that a little bit more to find out what happened to Bob. And then I also mentioned the 5 different versions of those 12 steps. And there are even other versions that are like 9 steps. I think there's pagan 9 steps. There's others that have a different number of steps, but the principles remain the same. And that is improving your life drastically. And then I really don't know, as I said, about what the future holds for 12-step programs, but I really do see it as an improvement over the past. There's a lot less shoulding on people. You should do this way, you should do that way, get a sponsor like this, work the program like that. And people seem to be moving away from that and listening a little bit more to folks like Steve DeShazer. He was a solution-focused SFBT. I really don't remember what it stands for. But he said, find out what works and do more of that. Simply. So that is the mantra for the day. Find out what works and do more of that. Talk to y'all next week. I do appreciate each and every one of you simply for existing.